Appreciate that entrance music chosen for me. Thank you very much. Also, I do want to say my slides are not nearly as beautiful as the last set, so I apologize up front. I am not a designer at all. Also, I'm going to be talking about something that is way, way less sexy than design. I'm going to be talking about operationalizing, which I recognize is one of those topics that we talk a lot about. We need to operationalize this. This is really important if we want to take action. But it is something that we don't talk about very much and doesn't get a lot of sort of screen time, so to speak. So I do want to dig into the process of operationalizing customer value. But despite the title really implying that it's about customer value, it is really about driving more revenue growth at the end of the day. And so one of the other things that I want to touch on as well as part of this is KPIs and our leading indicators of success and how they ultimately influence those lagging indicators of success like MRR growth. So before we dig into it, I'm going to, I don't know if this is going to be unpopular. I would actually really appreciate to know who's in the room. I'm not sure who I'm going to be offending or not. Could the product folks raise their hands? Okay, cool. And marketing? I feel like this is a marketing heavy room. All right, okay. So I am going to be focusing more on the product side of things. But despite that, product and marketing have this overlap in this terrible world called growth that we've all abused and killed. And so the people who talk about growth, because both product and marketing folks care a lot about growth, those people generally are talking about data. Generally, they're talking about, let's analyze our traffic, let's look at our web analytics, they're looking at product usage data and things like that. And I can understand why, right? It's hard to argue with numbers, and sometimes, if you really think about it, relying on data in this way is a little bit like a get-out-of-jail-free card, right? If we're ever sort of burdened or not really sure what to do in a certain situation, we can test it, right? We're not sure which messaging is going to land with our customers. We can put it on a landing page and test it. Not sure what feature is going to lead to more upgrades. We can segment our customers and put it behind the paywall and wait and see for that to come in. And so I can understand why we would want to rely on those types of things. So there's also actually those of us who are in different situation where we don't actually have all that much access to data. And when we're asked for what kind of data we want, we're not really sure. We don't know where to start. Differing opinions on what data is important. And data for the sake of data is a very, very real phenomenon. And basically what I want to ask just for the time that we're together here is to sort of forget about the data for now. And the reason that I'm asking you to forget about it is because unless and until you've got a fundamental understanding of who your best customers are and what matters to them, you're basically looking at dumb data, right? You're looking to that data, you're asking that data the wrong questions, and you're going to learn the wrong lessons. So we have to actually do this work. All right, so to demonstrate this point, I'm going to tell you about 3 different companies, 3 examples of where the data sort of led these companies astray. So the first one is a marketing tool that we worked with, very successful, did well for many, many, many years, and they started to experience slowed growth. They had 5,000 or 6,000 customers at the time. In all intents and purposes, they were doing great until they started to notice this slowing of growth, revenue growth. And so they did everything they could think of to address this thing. And they were, by the way, very, very good at content marketing. And they just doubled and tripled down on this content marketing that had been serving them very well and invested massively in content marketing. And they even doubled down on their performance marketing and their ad spend as well, because they were like, that's got to be the answer to this, right? Revenue growth filled the top of the funnel. But nothing worked. A year went by and still revenue growth remained flat despite traffic spikes. Actually, Rand mentioned something to that effect earlier today too. So this company was finally like, okay, we did everything we could think of to influence revenue growth. We've got to we need help. We need to get some support here. So they decided to prioritize learning from their customers. And what happened was we learned that their funnel metrics had kind of been lying to them. 2 groups of customers emerged out of this research. One group of customers were their SMBs who were looking to build their presence on social media, and they loved their product, they loved the brand, they flocked to their website, gushed over their content marketing, went on and on to the team about how much they loved them. And there was another group of customers that kind of flew in under the radar. They didn't talk that much to customer success. These customers, on the other hand, had already sort of validated that social media was going to work for them, and they really activated within the product kind of on their own, so they weren't reaching out to customer success. They were not the vocal majority. So this team ended up skewing in the direction of that first group, and they realized, we've been writing all of our content for this first group. We've been optimizing for this first group all along. They didn't stick around as long as the second group, right? That under the radar, they were the vocal majority. They're very easy to sort of stay focused on. And they realized that actually they should have been focusing on this second group all along. Second example is an invoicing tool that we worked with not so long ago. Very different situation, very different product. Hundreds and thousands of customers, thousands of people signing up every month. And what they were seeing was that the sort of product adoption, these customers, all these signups, they were not turning into long-term customers. And the president, I think he even described their team as being like a data factory. So they were doing a lot of testing. They were doing everything they could think of in the product to test and validate and figure out what to do, and nothing really moved the needle in any sort of significant way. And so they too decided, we're going to prioritize, we're going to add a level of sort of rigor, I think was the word he used. And they learned from their customers, and they too saw two different groups of customers showing up. They saw the businesses needing an invoicing tool. It's an invoicing tool. Sounds pretty obvious. But there was also another group of customers that not only did they need an invoicing tool, they needed an invoicing tool that allowed them to invoice on the go. So they were firing an old solution. They had, been sending their invoices in a Google Doc or in a spreadsheet or something like that. So they were already in business, already knew what they wanted out of an invoicing tool. They just needed to do mobile invoicing now. So this first group, they looked very happy. They activated in the product very quickly. Their NPS was off the charts high. They were very easy to please. They weren't firing an old solution. They were sending an invoice for the first time. So if you looked at the data, they activate into the product team's like, they're amazing. They're happy. They're activating quickly, but they were not turning into long-term customers, but this second group was. But the second group was much pickier, harder to please. They were looking for very, specific functionality and customizations and things like that the first group wasn't. So it was easy to mistake them. But LTV really did tell the story here too when we pulled apart these two cohorts of customers. Another example is this team, they were early movers in the global hiring space. So prior to COVID. So they had this big advantage in this global hiring space. And then all of a sudden COVID hit. We all know what happened next, right? A lot of investment went into this space. A lot of other companies popped up in this space. And all of a sudden, they were not the only game in town. And all of a sudden, they didn't really know how to differentiate themselves anymore. And all along, they thought, we're supposed to be targeting companies who are, scaling out their global hiring, their global talent pool, right? The HR professionals that compliance is important to them. We want to make sure that everything is done right, and international tax rules and all things like that. And so compliance, they thought that they were selling compliance to these companies, to these HR professionals. But when we talked to their customers, we learned that their best customers actually came to them only looking to make one key hire really, really quickly. That was it. Speed was wildly important, right? They didn't want to miss out on an opportunity. So they wanted to know that it was done right, but they didn't want to be bogged down with all the details. So this messaging around compliance wasn't really landing with them. They wanted to know that they could get the job done quickly and get this candidate hired quickly. I hope that what you're picking up from these three different stories are that none of them are about which segment was paying them the most, converting in the fewest amount of days, or even the highest converting overall. These stories are completely unique, and there is no formula in the data that could have given them this information. So you're probably realizing, or hopefully realizing, that you might also be guessing or assuming at who your best customers are. And if you're anything like the companies that we, talk to, you might be setting targets around highest paid, plans, or, looking at trends over time and investing in marketing and product experiences that aren't actually rooted in who your best customers are and what matters to them. So you have to actually do the work to get these answers. Okay, so I know that this sounds a little bit like, okay, another talk about customer research, somebody else on a stage saying talk to your customers and how important is that. That is not what I'm talking about today at all. The title of the talk was Operationalizing Product Growth. So I am not going to be talking to you about how to run this research. I'm going to talk about what we do after we run this research. But because I know many of you are wondering and wanting to know, okay, how do we actually do this? My business partner and I, Claire, who's here, sitting over there, Claire and I wrote a book called Forget the Funnel. And part of that book, there is an accompanying workbook. It's almost as long as the book itself. And inside that workbook, there are all kinds of templates and tools, and so I just want to make that available to anybody who's bought into this idea. There's resources there for you to run this research. But again, I am not going to be talking about how to do the research. I'm going to talk about what to do after the research, and that is the operationalizing the customer value. So in order to actually optimize this product growth and this experience, we did write a book on this process. This is basically the highlight reel of the book itself. And I want to share it with you so that you can decide for yourselves if you think this is something that could work for you. Okay, so the step one is find out what really matters. So you have these great conversations with your customers and they tell you all these amazing things. And then your job is to basically say, okay, I've got this group of customers that I want to focus on now. And you basically have eyes only for them because you want to get the goal is to get sort of up close and personal and find out actually what really matters to them. And so this is kind of a view of, I'm going to use my 3 examples from before to help illustrate this. Is anybody in the room familiar with the jobs to be done methodology? Okay, a couple hands, cool. So we use customer job statements, and we use customer jobs as the sort of essence of what our customers are trying to accomplish. We use job statements because they're nice and short, and they help sort of tell the story. But obviously, there's a lot of sort of data behind these. But for the marketing tool, the customer job that was identified from this better group of customers was, when I'm bogged down with the old way, give me a system to follow so I can feel organized and confident. The invoicing tool was when I'm invoicing on the go, when it's too hard, give me a flexible tool so I can retain so I can keep better records. Half of my stuff is not showing up on these slides for some reason. And then the hiring tool was when I need to make a key remote hire quickly, give me a done-for-me solution so I can retain and hire more seamlessly. And all of this is going to make more sense in a second. So jobs to be done really puts us in a position to understand our customers through the lens of what led them to seek out a solution like ours, what motivates them to choose our solution over all the others, and what desired outcomes do they ultimately get at the end of this? What can they do now that they couldn't do before? And so for these customers, this is it, right? What's that struggle, trigger moment? Our customers will tell us why they chose us over all of the other options available to them. It's all just sitting inside their heads. Imagine what you can do with this information. And then, of course, on the desired outcome side, now we know, what they're able to do now that they weren't able to do before, and really get that better picture. Once we have that better picture, now we're in a position to be able to sort of reverse engineer that success, right? Because they told us what was important to them. If we're going to reverse engineer something, we need to know the system. So I'm going to show you, I'm sure you've all seen 50 different versions of this. This is a customer journey. All of our customers go through these milestones with us, but this is not just any customer journey. You're going to notice that in those boxes is the word value. I'm not talking about pirate metrics. I'm not talking about MQLs and SQLs. I'm genuinely talking about the moments of value that our customers hit in their relationship with us, right? Those success moments for them, that's what this is. And in order to operationalize our product growth, we need to understand what these milestones are. So in general, right, I'll just do the highlights on the 3 sort of phases here. The struggle phase is really when our customers are experiencing the pain of dealing with the old way, whatever that old way might be. And they experience this moment where they're like, F this, I'm not doing this anymore. And they start out on their path to basically finding a better path forward. And they move into sort of solution-seeking mode, and eventually they discover you. If your website or your marketing materials does a good job, assuming that it does, then they're gonna give your product a try, right? And this is that sort of critical threshold moment out of hell here. They sort of stick in evaluation until you have solved their customer's job. So evaluation ends at product adoption, right? This is you solving their job to be done. Really, really, obviously very important. But I think the majority of us are probably in recurring revenue businesses and SaaS businesses, and so the growth phase is actually the most important one, right? Getting to product adoption is only the start of the story for recurring revenue. It's really around, product engagement and delivering continued value over time. So, and then also it gets really interesting when we start talking about expansion and, all the opportunities that live there, like net revenue retention and things. That's all lives over in sort of the growth phase. So this is the sort of customer experience the system that we're going to reverse engineer. Now, I just want to make sort of one little note here that your customer's experience might not be 6 milestones. This is for simplicity's sake, right? You might be selling into enterprise and sell really complex product, and therefore your evaluation phase might look a little bit different from this, but for the purposes of showing how we sort of pull apart customer value, I'm using this as the example, but if you have questions about it, we can talk about it after. I'm gonna focus on this part. And I know it seems a little bit abstract, but basically this is the part of the product experience that is typically the, for lack of a better word, crunchiest or toughest to sort of understand and unpack. And if we can figure these out, the rest becomes so much clearer to us. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. So continued value I've mentioned already, right? This is, before we can decide how we want to introduce our product, we need to know what does continued value look like for our customers. Because again, recurring revenue, if we cannot deliver continued value, we cannot compete. We can't stay in business. So for our 3 examples, they told us they want to feel organized and confident. The marketing tool. The invoicing tool was, I want solid record keeping. For the hiring platform, it was about retaining and hiring new talent. So if we map that value to product usage, it looks a little bit more like this. Calendar, functionality, and performance data for the marketing tool. Lists of invoices by client or date, these record keeping for the invoicing tool, and for the hiring tool, it's more about payroll and getting new offers out. So we're mapping the value that our customers told us they get to the product usage. Value realization, same sort of thing. This is when everything clicks into place for our customers for the first time. And when we look back to our examples, they were looking for a system to follow, these marketing folks, for the marketing tool. For the invoicing tool, wanted tons of customizations. You wouldn't even believe the customizations these people were looking for. But this tool could handle it, so that flexibility. And then for the hiring platform, it was really about that done for me sort of feeling, right? And if we map that to product usage, for the marketing tools, about content being loaded, automations running. For the invoicing tools, invoices are actually client ready and being sent. And for the hiring tools, about offering employment offers getting signed. Now we can finally figure out, how do we actually introduce this product, right? Because now we know. And I'm sure all of you have heard this stat, right? For customers who sign up for your product, 70% log in once and never come again. So this one's really, really important to get right. We often are guessing, but when we're reverse engineering like this, we know exactly what to help them do when they get into our product for the first time. So for the marketing tool, it's setting up their first automation. Don't show them anything else. Focus on helping them do this. For that invoicing tool, show them the customizations for their first invoice. And for the hiring platform, it was about finding that country that had to be there, obviously, and then helping them get that offer sent out. So this is how we'll know what product usage to focus on, right? Where we map what customers say is valuable to them to the specific parts of the product that deliver that value. Now, you probably would have guessed that for all of these milestones, there is a KPI. So we'll know we've done our jobs helping customers get from one milestone to the next with these KPIs. I'm not going to read this slide, but you can sort of see what's happening here, right? We're mapping, again, what customers said was valuable to product attributes and usage and frequency of usage that shows us and demonstrates to us that they're getting value at each of these milestones. Because, of course, like I mentioned before, when we focus on our leading indicators of success, our lagging indicators of success benefit. If we can't help our teams be successful and take action, then we're not helping them. And this is the whole point of this, right? So too many teams are, guessing, and they don't need to be guessing. So now, every step of the way, your team knows exactly what to do. So now comes the fun part, the hard part too, which is where we actually identify all these growth opportunities, because like I promised, this is about maximizing product growth, and so how do we actually do that? So now that we know what good looks like for these amazing high LTV customers, we know what product usage we're looking at, we know what those milestones look like, now comes time to do the sometimes harrowing work of experiencing your customer's current customer experience, right? And doing the secret shopper thing and literally going through, all of your marketing materials. And you do all of this and your product experience, but you do all of this wearing the hat of that customer, reminding yourself of that customer job to be done. I often recommend you put like a sticky with a customer job statement so you remember, like, what is it we're doing again? Oh yeah, this is the customer that we care about. And so you go through your entire customer experience from the marketing to the product experience itself with this hat on and through that lens and identifying all the ways that you might be dropping the ball. Because you are so much more familiar now with the pain that they were experiencing before. So you know what the struggle looks like when they're looking at your marketing, right? You know what anxieties or deal breakers they may have about adopting a product like yours. So you know, to put that lens on when you're going through your early product experience. You know what features they care about. And you know where all those mismatches live. And this can be really, really hard. It can really, really suck because it kind of means oftentimes it means you kind of have to admit that the baby is ugly. And it's hard to do, especially when you've invested months or weeks or years, pulling together these product experiences, whether, email onboarding sequences and overhauling your website messaging and things like that. Like, we're always working on these things all the time. And so it can be very hard to go over this entire customer experience and admit that, like, wow, we've been really dropping the ball, or we've been burying this feature, or, we haven't been actually helping our customers, actually adopt our product. So now this is the antidote to customer research that dies on a shelf, right? This is where customer insight actually gets actioned. And again, if we're focused on these leading indicators of success, our lagging indicators of success, like revenue, will benefit. So I know that many of you are probably thinking, I think the product team ran like UX research last month, and I think customer success ran a customer survey. I talk to my customers all the time. We can do this. I don't actually need to go out and talk to my customers. We can do this. I already know enough about my customers. But I do need to warn you that if you go through this entire experience and you say, okay, I'm going to identify what our customer's job to be done is, we're going to reverse engineer their success. We're going to map to the product usage. We're going to develop these KPIs, and then we're going to audit our entire customer experience, and you do it all for the wrong customers, you will have completely wasted your time. We have been through this process, honestly, it's definitely time that we count, but I'm going to guess it was about 100. 97 times out of that 100, the companies that we talked to, their targeting was completely off, and they had no idea. 100 times out of 100, we learn new language to use for their customers, or we learn about new anxieties or new deal breakers they didn't know of, or we find out that they were burying a feature in their product activation that was actually really important, or that they've been burdening, happens all the time, they've been burdening their customers with irrelevant tasks when they get into their product when they could have just been focusing on those key features. And often what happens as well is we identify opportunities for ongoing engagement as well, and to better engage their customers over time. No matter how much traffic you throw at this thing, like the top of funnel is not gonna save you here. You can double your ad spend, triple your ad spend, send even amazing traffic to your website, but if if the fundamentals are out of whack, you are completely wasting your money. And this happens all the time, right? My wager is that 9 out of 10 of you are guessing. And many are turning into sort of feature factories. We don't like to think of ourselves as feature factories, but a lot of us are guessing. We hear it all the time. We talk to teams that, these are real quotes, basically. Okay, so now I'm gonna try to satisfy the data nerds in the room and quote a study that was run. So companies who can actually conduct and successfully operationalize their customer research in this way enjoy 54% greater return on their marketing investment, 18 times faster average sales cycle, 10 times improvement on the cost of customer service, 3.5 times greater revenue from customer referrals, and 56% more cross-sell and upsell revenue. This shit works. So again, the vast majority of people who talk about growth, talk about analytics, they talk about data, they talk about tweaking your pricing pages and your ad campaigns, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't do those things. What I'm saying is don't do them until and unless when you have this fundamental understanding in first, right, of your customers first. Because the answers that you need actually live inside the heads of your best customers. You just have to go and pull it out. They know what it felt like to struggle with the old way. They know who they went to, who they talked to, how they learned about you as a service, as a solution to this problem. They know what other solutions they experimented with in order to, and eventually find yours. They know why they chose you over all of the other options available to them, and there are usually very, very many, right? All you need to do is unlock this, what is already inside your best customers' heads. I mentioned already that we wrote a book on this process. The book is called Forget the Funnel, but the framework that I'm describing here is customer-led growth. The Hotjar team was very generous and purchased a bunch of copies for you all. So if anybody is interested in a copy and getting a free copy of this book, they will be available. I'm not 100% sure where. They're right outside the door. So if anybody wants to grab a copy, please do. If anybody wants to grab Claire and I, because they have any questions about this process or will it work for you, come and chat with us. And that's it for me. Thanks.